Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. In today's video, we'll be covering the transfer portal. Now, I posted last night inside of the channel that Elijah Herring was our first, and at the time that we are recording this video, only player to enter into the portal. What's it mean for this team? Is there a chance that he ends up staying with Tennessee? And speaking of staying or coming back to Tennessee, there's a player that recently left Tennessee in the transfer portal, and they are back in the portal again. So is there a possibility that Tennessee wants to try to go out and target that player? We'll also be just talking about, what we should be expecting over the next couple of weeks while this transfer portal is open. But please do us a really big favor. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so looking at our stats from last season, we can see that Elijah Herring is actually leading the team in total tackles with 79. But as we scroll on down to the defensive stats, we can see that right here in the solo tackle column, Elijah Herring was actually, maybe third or fourth as far as that category goes. And everyone who was ahead of him in this category is no longer with this team. And now just looking at his individual stats, right, we can see that he's listed at 6'3", 238 pounds. And we kind of already know what his stats was from last season. But, he also had a sack. Okay, he has a pass breakup. And you can see that in 2022, he had a couple of tackles as well. So, yeah, he's got good size, and he was a guy that was in on several of our tackles. But what does it really mean losing a guy like Elijah Herring? Well, I can say this about Elijah Herring. He's got the skills. He's got the talent. I mean, he's got the size, everything that you want. Last season, we didn't always see it, okay? Now, he was leading us in total tackles, and I think that goes to show what type of a player he is inside of his heart. He wants to go make those plays, but he was just kind of a step too slow a lot of times. But it wasn't just Elijah Herring. It was our entire linebacking core. So I think that it was something with the way that Coach BJ was teaching our players that just kind of got them off track. And we're seeing the difference with Coach Ng so far. It looks like our linebackers are attacking that line of scrimmage. The first step is not backwards, or it's not always out of the way. It's more towards the line, or it's more towards where the play is going, unless they're in some sort of a zone coverage. Then obviously they've got to get into their drops. But I'm saying all that just to say I felt like this was a season that Elijah Herring could have taken that next step forward, and definitely just having him as a depth piece, because I don't think that he would have started over guys like Keenan Pili, Arion Carter, Jeremiah Thielander, maybe Caleb Perry he could have kind of been into the mix with. Maybe, Jalen Smith he kind of could have been in that mix with. But I also think that Edwin Spillman was ahead of him on the depth chart at this point, and it didn't help him at all being out of spring. So maybe it is going to be good for him to go and get a new, change of scenery. But again, I just can't emphasize this enough. Seeing the way the Coach Ends has our linebackers operating at this point, it would be good if maybe Elijah Herring would reconsider and come back and just kind of stick around. Understanding that, hey, I'm not going to be a starter, but I can get rotated in. I'm sure that's not what he wants to do, because if you want to start, you just want to start. Like, you need to get those reps. You need to get that playing time. I would say that maybe he could end up following Coach BJ to Michigan, where he's going to be playing in the Big Ten. That's a conference that the linebackers don't have to play out in space a whole bunch. That might fit his skill set a little bit better. We saw that, Elijah played well in the Citrus Bowl, and we said, hey, this is a game that might kind of fit him better, because, again, it's more of that Big Ten style where you get to play inside of a box, and it's not a whole lot of, having to, play out in space. So I think that could end up suiting him pretty well, but it might not be Michigan. I would say that probably Big Ten would be the best place for him to go. Now, what does it mean, for the rest of this team? Okay, like we just kind of talked about, don't think that he was going to be a starter. Keenan Pili is a guy that is injury prone. So if he ends up going down, then all of a sudden Elijah Herring leaving us looks a lot worse. Okay, like it looks like we needed him more. But I would say that we've got enough bodies inside of that room that we could overcome it. Does the staff want to go out and try to target another linebacker body? I think that we're fine, because there's even more players that aren't necessarily full scholarship guys, but they can play. And, I feel like they could step in if we get into a bond, and they would know what to do, and they would play hard with that passion. So I think that we're fine from that perspective. Now, Elijah Herring is the older brother of Caleb Herring, who is going to be one of our Leos this season. I would say he's probably going to be in that 3-deep rotation. Now, we do rotate more, but I think that he's in the top 3. It's probably going to be, obviously, James Pierce is going to be number 1. I would say that Joshua Josephs is number 2, and then it's going to be Caleb Herring. So he's going to get a whole lot of playing time. He looked good in the, limited minutes that he got last season. I don't know how much he played, but he looked good whenever he was out there. And he looked really good in our orange and white game. I think he got a sack going up against Lantern, who I still believe will end up being the best offensive lineman on this team this season. So, there's a whole lot to love about Caleb's game. Does he want to follow his big brother to a school outside of the SEC? I don't think that he does. And I would, anticipate that Elijah would recommend to Caleb to stay put because Caleb's in a really good situation. We just talked about he's going to get rotated in a bunch. Coach G is the best defensive line coach in the entire country. We saw what he did with James Pierce, who is now the number one defensive player in the entire country that's coming back this season. Things like that. Like, you want to be able to get better and better and better. And there's no coach that is going to be better at that than Coach G for a defensive lineman. So I think that Caleb Herring is going to be staying put. And the insiders and experts and everybody else that's very close to the program have kind of echoed those same sentiments. So nothing too much to worry about right there. But at the same time, you never really know. If it's a perfect situation, then maybe Caleb does leave. And I mean, you would love to hold on to him. I would also honestly love to hold on to Elijah Herring as well, just because, again, I think that he could take that next step forward with Coach Inge. But we'll see what happens with it. I think that at the end of the day, Elijah's probably gone. Caleb probably stays. Our team, for the most part, isn't really taking a gigantic step backwards. And we just got news that somebody is expected to jump back into that transfer portal, and that is Tyler Barron. Now, for those of y'all that forgot, he left us at the end of last season before our bowl game, and he had 5.5 sacks, I want to say, last year playing at the strong side defensive end for us. He came on strong, and he looked like he was, poised to maybe make a push to go into the NFL, or, if he's going to come back for another season. He said, man, I mean, our front, our pass rush should be incredible. But he decides to transfer out, ends up at Ole Miss, and I think, or it was rumored that he was going to be going to Ole Miss, but it sounds like he changed his mind, goes on to Louisville. Now he's changing his mind again, and he's back in that transfer portal, or he is expected to be. So my question was, is he a player that would be a take for this staff? I would say probably not, okay? I think that he probably got himself into a bond, which, I mean, you hate to see. I mean, I don't want to see any of our players, even if they leave us, I don't want to see them do poorly, especially if they're not trashing our program, things like that. I would hope that he could find a place where he can succeed at. Some people have been speculating that he might be going back to Ole Miss, but would he want to come back to Tennessee? I think that he most definitely would. I think he went out and saw, hey, the grass ain't really greener out there like he thought it was. And just hearing all the, hype and buzz around our defensive line, he probably wants to be a part of that. But would the staff take him? I think that it would have to be an absolutely perfect situation because, obviously with him leaving us, we've kind of gotten comfortable with the players that we have now at that strong side defensive end, and we're loaded there. So what I feel like would have to happen is several of the strong side DNs would have to kind of enter into the portal. I would say if 2 of them do, and, if Tyler Barron wants to come back, understanding that he's going to be in a more limited role than what he was in the previous season in 2023, and also understanding that he's going to be taking that pay cut. He's going to have to give us a hometown discount, things like that, to come back for us. Then, yeah, maybe we add him as more of a depth piece. And, hey, look, if it helps us win, I'm all for it. I'm not the type of guy that, gets into these, like personal battles and stuff. It's all about winning at the end of the day. So I would take him back. You know what I mean? Like, again, if it's an absolutely perfect situation, he would have to be there kind of towards the end of the transfer portal cycle, around like April the 30th, 29th, something like that. If he's still around and if we've lost a body or 2 inside of that room, then yeah, I would say that we maybe kick the tires on Tyler Barron and bring him on back home. But I do kind of want to shift gears and talk about just a couple of running backs that are in the portal as of right now. All right, so this is On3's transfer portal for 2024 in the spring window. All this stuff is updated. What I'm looking for, okay, we kind of talked about it. We want an upperclassman running back that maybe has 1 more year left to play. Don't think it's a good idea to go out and try to find a younger guy because that might disrupt our room. Also want to get a bigger body back, and we're seeing right here that Penny Boone right here fits that description pretty much to a T. Now, there's a couple of issues. He's been at like 3 schools since he's been in college, so that's not a great look, but he does have that bigger body, 6'2", 225 pounds, and he was at Louisville with our new running backs coach, Coach Sims. So it'll be interesting to see if Tennessee tries to go out and target Penny Boone, but I would say that if he's asking for too much money, then there's absolutely no need for us to waste our time. But as we're kind of going through here, all of the other running backs that kind of fit that description so far are, either committed to go somewhere else or they're probably going to be wanting to be that feature back or they're underclassmen, things like that. So there is another running back right here in Javaris Harris that I've had a couple people ask about him coming from Memphis, things like that. He's a guy that I would not necessarily want to target just because he's an underclassman. But that is pretty much it for all of the running backs that, I would recommend or think that Tennessee is going to want to try to target in the transfer portal at this point. And Tennessee usually waits until, maybe like towards the end of the transfer portal cycle before we start to really go out there and target guys. And, I think that obviously that's the smartest thing to do. Just kind of like see who all is going to be entering in from different teams, but also who's going to be leaving your own team. That makes the most sense to me. And take your time, really covet these guys, really find out about them from a background perspective. I think that at this point in the game for Tennessee, that makes the most sense, especially if we're talking about inside of that running back room. I mean, you want to make sure that whoever comes in is not going to disrupt that room, understands what their role is going to be. And, clearly they're going to have to do it on the field. But I think that the locker room thing is the biggest reason that a lot of the insiders have been saying we might not be going into the portal to get another running back. But at this point, it does sound like they're kind of starting to switch their stance on it. And I don't know, exactly why, but it sounds like Tennessee will be looking for a running back in that portal. What other positions will we be targeting? I'm not sure. But as far as other players that could be leaving us, sounds like we could have some guys that will enter into the portal, maybe just to leverage and get some more money. I think that happens every single season. And it usually comes, about 3 to 4 days, maybe even a week after the portal has opened up. So we'll see what happens with that. But, maybe Tennessee can entice those guys if it's someone that we really need on this roster to come back. And I'm sure that we have money allocated just for those purposes. But I would still say that, wide receiver room is pretty deep. Probably going to lose one or two of those players. The defensive line's also really deep. I don't know if we do lose anyone there just because it seems like they get along so well, but this is still a business for these players, and we could end up losing players there. We can't really afford to lose anybody else, I think, inside of that linebacker room. So hopefully everyone stays put. If a guy like Caleb Perry wants to hit that portal, now all of a sudden we're starting to get kind of shorthanded, and we'll have to go out to the portal and find another linebacker body, and that can get a little bit messy just because it will throw off any other position that we might need to target. Left guard could still kind of be up in the air as far as the staff is concerned. I don't know how they feel about it, but I love Sham at left guard. I felt good about it. And we know that there's some veterans that can back him up. So not too concerned about the depth at that position. But outside of that, I just don't really see a whole lot of positions that will be, too much movement. Maybe in the secondary, maybe a guy like Jordan Matthews, we, kind of talked about, maybe Christian Charles wants to leave. Maybe Christian Conyer, maybe Christian Harrison. If those players leave, then yeah, we'll have to probably go out and find someone else. If one of the safeties leaves, especially if it's Turntine or if it's John Slaughter, then we might have a problem, Houston. You know what I mean? We might have to try to go out and find another safety. But I think that we're pretty versatile enough inside of that room. I mean, we can move some people around from here to there. I mean, we should be fine, y'all. But again, there's no telling. There's always chaos with the transfer portal. But that's going to be it for this video. Just wanted to make it, again, short, sweet, and simple. But thank y'all, as always, for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and all the volunteer fans. And we'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.